Today we are going to do lesson 27, but first we need to grade lesson 26. So pause the video to grade lesson 26 and then turn it into the turn-in bin. Today we are going to talk about multiples, factors, and the least common multiple. So first let's talk about multiples. Basically what you need to remember about multiples is that there are a multiple or a multitude of multiples. Basically, there are infinitely many multiples because you can take a number and multiply it by 2, by 3, by 4, by 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever number you want to do. So numbers only count as factors or multiples when you multiply or divide by integers, not by fractions or decimals. So multiples, I'm going to multiply 16 by different numbers to get some multiples. So if I multiply 16 times 1, I get 16. So therefore 16 is a multiple of 16. If I multiply by 2, I get 32 because 16 times 2 is 32. So 32 is a multiple of 16. If I multiply by 3, I get 48. If I multiply by 4, I get 64. If I multiply by 5, I get 80. And then it just keeps going. It just goes on forever and ever and ever. 96, 112, you get the picture. So now let's talk about factors. So when we're finding multiples, we multiply. When we are finding factors, we are actually going to just divide. Okay. When we think about factors, we need to remember that there are a fixed number of factors. So there's a very limited number of factors. You can kind of think of these as peas in a pod. There's going to be 2 numbers that make up the factors of a number. So when we are dividing, we could say, well, what times what equals whatever the number is. In this case, it's 16. So what times what equals 16? Well, 1 times 16 equals 16. 2 times 8 equals 16. And 4 times 4 equals 16. What factors are they? Well, those are our factors. 1, 16, 2, 8, 4, and 4. So if we look at some examples, we're going to do factors and then we are going to do multiples. So the first thing we're going to do is factors for this one. And then we will do multiples. So list all of the factors and the first 4 multiples. So the easiest way to do factors is if you write a T-chart. So we're going to write the 72 up here because that is the number that we are finding. And then we're just going to make a T. Then we're going to say, well, 1 times what is 72? 1 times 72. And then find all of those numbers that are divisible by that number. 2 times 36. 3 times 24. 4 times 18. 5 is not a factor. 6 is. It is 6 times 12. And then 7 is not, but 8 is. It's 8 times 9. Those are all of our factors. So then when I list them out, I would list them out in number order, and I would just go start from this 1 and work my way down and then work my way back up here. So I would say that my factors are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 9, 12, 18, 24, 36, and 72. Kind of ran out of room there, but you get the idea. Okay, and now it says to list the first 4 multiples of 72. So my first multiple of 72 is 72 because that is 72 times 1. 72 times 2 is 144. 72 times 3 is 216. 72 times 4 is 288. So those are my first four multiples of 72. All right, we're going to list our factors of 45. So again, we're going to make our t-chart. 1 times 45. 2 is not divisible by 45. 3 is. It's 3 times 15. 4 is not. 5 is. It is 5 times 9. 6 is not. 7 is not. And 8 is not divisible. So these are our factors of 45. We have 1, 3, 5, 9, 15, and 45. Now it says list 5 multiples of 8. You can list whatever multiples you want. I'm just going to go in order. 8 times 1 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 3 is 24. 8 times 4 is 32. And 8 times 5 is 40. So those are our factors, or our multiples, excuse me, of 8. So now that we know this, we also need to remember that factors come in pairs. Sorry. I forgot to mention that. Factors come in pairs, or I mentioned it and forgot to write it. So 1, 16, 2, 8, 4, 4. When you are listing those out, though, you will not list those same numbers twice. So in this case, I would not have listed out 4 and 4 both times. I would just have said 1, 2, 4, 8, and 16 are factors of 16. Okay, now that we know how to do multiples and we know how to do factors, we are going to talk about least common multiple. So our least common multiple. These are going to come in handy when you are trying to find a fraction with a common denominator. So basically what you are going to do is you are going to list the multiple or the facts of each of these. Then you are going to look for matches. And then you are going to find the least and the greatest. Okay, so let's find the least common multiple of 9 and 12. To start with, I need to find what my multiples of these are. So 9, my multiples are 9, 18, 27, 36, and it just keeps going. I could go 45. I could stop there. 12, we've got 12, 24, 36. I could stop there. Let's just go 48 and then 60. We'll just go to 5 on both of those. So now looking at these, which one do they have in common? The very smallest that they have, the least that they have in common is this 36. So the least common multiple of 9 and 12 is 36. So the least common multiple of 2 or more numbers is the smallest multiple that they share. Okay, so that's how we find the least common multiple. If we're looking for the greatest common factor, basically we're going to factor these and then find which number they have in common that is the largest. So the greatest common factor of 2 or more numbers is the largest factor that they share. So let's find the greatest common factor of 40 and 64. So 40, it's 1 times 40, 2 times 20, 4 times 10, and 5 times 8. 64 is 1 times 64, 2 times 32, 4 times 16, and then 8 times 8. So now let's see which one of these they have in common. They both have a 1. They both have a 2. They both have a 4. They both have an 8. And then that is where our common numbers stop. So the greatest common factor, the largest factor that they both share, is 8. So now instead of the try it section, you can cross those off. We're actually going to use this section to help us use prime factorization to find the least common multiple. So we're going to do prime factorization for least common multiple. Okay. So if I have the numbers 18 and 24, and I want to find the least common multiple of each of those, and I don't want to sit here and go, oh, 1 times 18 is 2 times 18, 3 times 18, and keep going that way. What I can do is I can take these numbers down to prime factorization, and then I'm going to multiply the numbers that they have in common out to get my least common multiple. Let me show you what I mean. If I look at 18, my prime factorization for 18 is 2 times 3 times 3. My prime factorization for 24 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. So now that I'm looking at this, I want to use the numbers the most time that they are represented. So if we are looking at the 2's, in 18 it is only used 1 time. But in 24, it is used 3 times. So the most times that it is represented and used is 3 times. If I am looking at the 3's, it is used twice for 18 and only once for 24. So the most times it is used is 2 times. So therefore, we are going to use 3 twice, and we are going to use 2 3 times. So 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 equals 72. So our least common multiple of 18 and 24 is 72. If you need that explained again, you can just rewind and watch that part again.